Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Today we take a look at the case of 10 men who were involved in the distribution of an estimated £1.36 million of Class A. The 10 men collectively were sentenced to 104 years in prison for their part in the conspiracy, thanks to a major crackdown on the supply of Class A in Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire. The men were part of two organised crime groups, also known as O.C.Gs, which had trafficked the Class A drug between Lincolnshire and the West Midlands, with an estimated 17 kilos of cocaine between the 1st of January 2019 and the 27th of January 2020. During the warrants executed at the properties across Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire and Warwickshire and the West Midlands, specialist search teams seized 2.86 kilograms of uncut cocaine, which had a street value of up to £209,000. The officers also uncovered evidence of lavish lifestyles with receipts for a staggering £266,225 of goods, including luxury clothing still in boxes, which had been purchased at stores in London, Paris and Copenhagen. They found encrypted mobile phones and £29,540 of cash. The warrants were executed by the police in January 2020. The investigation revealed how the O.C.G from Lincolnshire had sourced Class A drugs from a Coventry-based O.C.G, with the couriers making frequent trips to Coventry area for the exchanges to take place. Drug buys also took place in the rural area of Stanton on the wolds of Nottinghamshire. The operation was uncovered by detectives and investigators from Lincolnshire Police and the East Midlands Serious Organised Crime Unit, also known as the EMSOU. Three of the men who were sentenced, Robert Diaz, who was 42 from Malking Lane in Waddington, Lincolnshire, and Barry Knight, who was 60 of Nuneaton Road, Bedworth in Warwickshire, and Stephen Oliver, who was 44 of Windsor Street, Rugby, Warwickshire, had stood trial in Nottingham Crown Court in August. A further 7 men had already pleaded guilty to other charges related to their part in the conspiracy, which had also included the production of cannabis. Assistant Chief Constable Kerrin Wilson from Lincolnshire Police said, "This was a complex drugs operation, and today's results showed the tendency and dedication of all the investigative teams from both Lincolnshire Police and the EMSOU. We are determined to tackle the scourge of drugs which have blighted the lives of many across society, and thanks to the hard work of the investigative team, organised crime gangs which push these drugs have been dealt a blow, swift and powerful, into their operation. Organised criminals prey on the user and their activities and can bring with them wider issues of violence and exploitation. We are pleased to see such a good result today, but we are not complacent. We will continue to work hard to safeguard our communities and protect the vulnerable. There will now be a Proceeds of Crime Act, also known as a POCA, proceedings against the offenders to recover the assets amassed amongst their criminal activity. The full details of the charges and the sentences that were given are as follows. Robert Diaz, who was 42 of Malkin Lane, Waddington, Lincoln, was found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine, and was sentenced to 19 years. Barry Knight, who was 60 of Nuneaton Road, Bulkington, Bedworth, Warwickshire, was found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine, and was sentenced to 18 years. Stephen Oliver, who was 44 of Windsor Street, Rugby, Warwickshire, was found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine. He had previously pleaded guilty to 1 count of producing cannabis between the 1st of June 2019 and the 16th of January 2020. He was sentenced to 8 years, plus a concurrent sentence of 21 months for production of cannabis. Edward Withell, who was 41 of North Parade, Lincoln. He had pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine. He was sentenced to 6 years and 4 months. Andrew Turner, who was 40 of Hollandcroft, Coventry in the West Midlands. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine, 1 count of producing Class B drugs, namely cannabis, and 1 RIPA offence. The sentence was 8 years, 8 months, plus a concurrent sentence of 8 months for cannabis production and 4 months with failing to provide a passcode. Joseph McCluskey, who was 43 of Parkfield Road, Kersley, Coventry, in the West Midlands, has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine. He was sentenced to 9 years and 9 months. Joe Morton, who is 50 of Torbay Road, Coventry, West Midlands. He has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine, and he was sentenced to 10 years and 9 months. Stuart Bassett Horcock, who is 34 of Oakland Close, Lincoln. He had pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, and he was sentenced to 8 years. Jack Constable, who was 34 of Foxhill Road, Nottingham. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine, and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. And Michael Kershaw, who was 41 of Florian Way, Coventry, West Midlands. He had pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, namely cocaine, and sentenced to 7 years and 6 months. Thank you for joining us today. What are your opinions on the crimes committed by the gang? Do you believe the sentences were too harsh or not harsh enough? Please let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more Street Crime UK content, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you can join us on the next video. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, stay safe.